nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down. My brothers on the ground, I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me away to go. Leave me, run like you never did. No, believe me, run like you never run before.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scottish Rugby Podcast, brought to you by the Scottish Rugby blog. I am Cammy Black. You are watching us. If you're watching us live, we are on Facebook, we're on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Still, I think the only rugby podcast broadcasting on Twitch. So we are broadcasting to a crowd of baffled Americans, I think, who randomly throw questions at us about, who's the fastest? And stuff like that. So if you're watching random Americans on Twitch, feel free to throw us a question. It's always good fun. Joining me this evening, we have Ian Hay. Good evening.
Hello. How are we?
I'm very well, Ian. You bearing up okay?
Yes. Might have overindulged myself a little bit last night watching the other sporting event.
Also joining.
Drowned.
So, well, indeed they did. Yeah, I had to watch it twice because it was too late for the eldest to watch it last night, so I had to put it on this morning for her as well. So I had to relive it twice rather than just forget about it. Also joining us, we've got John Anderson. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Cam. I'm in much better spirits than the bold Ian here. I'm definitely the better half of the duo tonight.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. And joining us from his hotel room, we've got Craig Manson. Good evening, Craig.
Good evening from sunny Bradford.
Right, Craig, you could have come and done this in my garden. I'm along the road. Well, next time you're in Bradford, we'll sort out a live podcast from my garden, socially distanced. Getting myself a second microphone.
Should we come down for that, Cam?
Well, we need to do it at some point. We've done our live club dinner, haven't we? And we did have some plans, and we'd made initial inquiries last autumn about doing a live podcast somewhere in Edinburgh around the Six Nations or autumn test, and we'd had some positive feedback. But then the pandemic happened, so at some point we will do a live podcast in person in a bar. If you have a bar and you want to host us, and you need to have a PA system, we can set it up roughly. We kind of know what we're doing. But just basically have a bar. We'll talk in between the halftime of the rugby and provide some entertainment. Get in touch.
Encourage everyone to buy all the beers.
Yes, we'll do it for free beer.
Yes.
That's cheap. I was going to say it'd be cheap, but probably be cheaper to pay us, to be honest.
Based in Ian's antics.
I'll just end up. I'll end up upside down behind the telly somewhere.
And a fine night will be had by all.
What better reason to invite us along than Craig ending upside down, upside a telly? It's brilliant.
No, we're not going to cause any damage to the telly.
Oh no damage, just upside down.
Yeah. So yeah, if you own a bar in Edinburgh and you are suitably insured, then get in touch. Let us know. We'll happily come and do a live podcast from there. Speaking of live shows, we're only 2 days away now from our big club dinner 2 Dodmaster, which is if you've been under a rock or not listening to this podcast for a while, we're doing our own British and Irish Lions themed version of TV's Taskmaster. So we've got Johnny McGinty, Craig's very familiar with Johnny from Howard Fife,
Not
representing
that
Scotland.
familiar now. Come on now.
Not familiar in that way.
Extremely familiar with Johnny.
Not necessarily in a positive way. So we've got Johnny McGinty representing Scotland. We have Steph Prosser from the Rock and Roll podcast representing Wales.
Who got a shout out from Carol bloody Vorderman.
Carol Vorderman. We'll come on to Steph's antics in a minute.
What?
We've got Lee Calvert from the Blood and Mud Rugby podcast representing England, or at least the correct part of England, which is anywhere north of Bradford and Birmingham. We've got Sam Larner, whose granddad went to Ireland, representing Ireland. And we have Robbie Owen from Squidge Rugby representing the Springboks, because Razzie Erasmus says he knows what he's talking about and he's very funny, according to Razzie. So we've asked Squidge to represent the Springboks. Now, we are raising money for My Name's Doddy through this. And one of the tasks that the contestants were set is to raise the most money. And the other tasks are going to be remain a secret until the night. We'll keep a little bit of a surprise. But the fundraising task so far has been utterly amazing. We broke the £2,000 barrier today. We're over that. Johnny at the minute is streaking ahead. I kind of feel slightly responsible because every time I retweet the fundraising, I'm very aware I'm retweeting from the Scottish Rugby blog account. So given he's representing Scotland, he's got an unfair advantage there. So he's streaking ahead at the minute with the fundraising. So to counter that, Steph from the Rock and Roll podcast has been trying all sorts of different shenanigans. He's been spamming Ryan Reynolds. I think in the hope of some sort of multi-million pound Hollywood last minute intervention. And today he managed to, as John said, get not just a retweet, but a personal tweet from Carol Vorderman asking people for donations, which resulted in donations of £40.
Wow.
And I loved one of the comments on Carol Vorderman's one was, I love that you've done this, but Johnny is representing Scotland. Do you want to retweet him too?
So we're up to £2,114. So at the minute, Johnny's in the lead. It says, if you go on the page, if you go onto justgiving.com/teams/Dodmaster contestants, they're all there. I'll put the link on the podcast on your apps, and we'll put it on the blog page tomorrow as well. So Johnny is in the lead. It says he's got 600. He's actually got 700 because I've had to reallocate some funds. Somebody asked me to reallocate a donation to him that come in the general funds. So Johnny's on £700. Steph at the minute is on £380. Again, somebody reallocated £50 to him. Steph raised more money getting someone to sell Super Furry Animal white labels in return for a donation than he did from the Carol Vorderman tweet.
Oh, Carol's career has absolutely died, hasn't it?
Thanks for the support, though, Carol. If you're watching.
Hang on. I've got a Super Furry Animals pun. The Vorderman don't give a...
Oh, very good.
Oh,
Bravo.
he's here
Well
all day,
done.
folks. Tip your waiter.
We've got Robbie Owen, who started his fundraising quite late on, is shot into. He's currently in third on £327.71. Then Lee's on 288, and Sam, it says £30, but again, someone's asked me to reallocate a donation to him, so he's got 130 for Ireland. So if you've got any Irish listeners, you've got a lot of hard work to do between now and Friday to get that up.
I'm really sorry in advance to Sam, because obviously this podcast has basically for the last 2 years been me absolutely slamming the Irish and giving them dogs abuse. And like, I do it in the nicest possible way. Give them money. It's not my fault. Like, it's not my fault I hate your clubs. It's not his fault I hate your clubs. Give him money. It's fine.
Yeah, so we've got that going along the banner at the bottom. I'm going to leave that up if you're watching live. So it's justgiving.com/team/Dodmaster contestants, and you can donate to that. The donations will be open till the end of August because the event's going to be live streamed, and then it'll be available for people to watch back for about a month. So people will be giving donations hopefully up until the end of August if they watch it back. We're going to complete the task on the evening. So it'll be the last task of the evening. So all through the evening, a bit like Children in Need Comic Relief, we're asking you to keep donating to the contestants. So if you're watching live and you want to get involved in a bit of excitement, donate during the show, because then we'll see the amounts go up and down.
What about the judges? Are we allowed to donate during the show?
Yes, I have no objection to judges donating because it's all. We can't really object to it. I'm the little Alex Horn character, and so I'm not a judge. I'm an arbiter, I suppose. I'm there like a clerk, I suppose. I'm the committee clerk. I'm there to kind of make sure that fair play happens and that proper processes are followed.
Well, I would like each of the contestants to approach me directly for my donation. Woo me.
Well, if you listen, Rock and Roll did a little preview podcast last night, and they had Johnny on, and they're talking to Steph, and they're forming quite a nice little rivalry between the two of them.
Nice.
Which hopefully will spill over into the night in some form of violence. We'll see. So really looking forward to that. So we've got the contestants for our Dodd Masters. It's not like Taskmaster where you have one Taskmaster. We've got three. So we've got Josh from the Blood and Mud podcast. We've got Bruce Aitchison from Happiness is Egg Shaped, and we've also got John, our own John Anderson. John is going to be your vessel on the evening. So if you make comments during the night, John can be influenced. He's the Dodmaster that will be influenced, giving voice to the viewers.
I have no morals whatsoever. Influence me, guys. Give me everything you've got. I will make sure it gets aired.
Yeah. Speaking of influencers, this podcast is sponsored by Manscaped. That is a nice wee seg, wasn't it?
Nice.
So if you go to manscaped.com/Scottish Rugby, or you go manscaped.com and use the code SRP, you can get 20% off plus free shipping on a range of male grooming products. We talk about this every week. I mean, I will say Manscaped do support male testicular awareness charities.
They do.
So, maybe you are, you're trimming and you enjoy trimming and you want to get a new trimmer through Manscaped. It's a good opportunity to go down and have a little check. Regular checking is, we don't talk a lot about our own health as men a lot. We're not known for doing that, but Manscaped would encourage you to have a little fumble in the shower, and just check everything's okay down there. And if you're unsure, go and ask for someone to double check it.
I can confirm, having checked with their nose trimmer this week.
You didn't check. Now, can I be stressed? When you say checked with your nose trimmer, you're not using that to check for any abnormalities downstairs, are you, John? Because I'm not.
I mean, it looks like a wand, doesn't it? It looks like it should be the sort of
Careful.
thing like in the Marvel movies they would have checked with that, wouldn't they? But no. So are we shot their nose trimmer this
We
week?
Doctor Strange running around waving a nose hair trimmer around.
I mean, is it any less believable?
Yeah. So you can go, like I said, go manscaped.com/Scottish Rugby or manscaped.com and use the code SRP at the checkout. You get 20% off plus free shipping on a range of male grooming products. If you want to, you can listen to this podcast on various different podcast apps. So you can't just watch live. You can also listen back afterwards. If you don't like the adverts, or you don't like the fact that we rabbit on for a long time, you can go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast. And for £3 a month, you can get ad-free versions of the podcast. And you can also get something we put out that is called a mini pod, where what we do is we just cut straight from, hello, this is Cammy Black 2, and this is the news. And then we cut out Hands in the Rock as well. So you get about 40 minutes to an hour instead of an hour and a half. So some people like that and asked for it. So we decided to put that out as well. If you pay £5 a month, you'll get your name read out on the podcast and our internal thank you as well. That just we started the Patreon because people were enjoying the live streaming. So we decided to do that because just to cover our costs. And it's quite fun because we put out extra episodes as well. Like last week we did Scotland's Hardest Players of the 2000s, in which Ian told us of his recipe for Monster Munch smoothies.
Monster Munch smoothies, yes.
So
We
tune into
didn't determine whether is it pickled onion Monster Munch smoothies.
Yes. Sorry, I should have mentioned. I also put pickled onions in
Magnificent.
it.
No, I just assumed it was pickled onion ones.
Oh no, I mean that's the obvious default, but I just wanted to make sure there wasn't another recipe.
Oh, don't worry, I'll work out flaming hot. I've got plenty of hot sauces.
Exactly. Can you imagine?
As I said on that podcast, you know, you were too busy worrying about whether or not you could. You didn't stop to think whether or not you should, Ian.
Absolutely
Playing God.
ruined my blender with knickknacks. Hot and spicy knickknacks. Absolutely ruined.
Knickknacks, right?
And if you have ever ruined your knickknacks with a blender, then maybe you want to go to manscaped.com and try something a bit more gentle.
Bravo.
I reckon if you slap some roysters in a blender and then mix it with a wee flake, you could be onto something really out there.
A flake.
Aye,
Like-
I do.
like-
Like,
You're never going to let that lie that I chose a flake on the other night.
Oh.
He's
Listen,
never going to let it lie, is he? But then I've got something that I'm not going to let lie. But I'm sure we're going to get to
we'll
that.
get to that. Don't worry, Craig. We will get to that. I would
I'm
just
so
say,
glad your life is complete, Craig.
if you're mixing roysters and a flake in a blender, the result is only going to end up hunting you down in the Arctic. There's a wee literary reference. There's a wee literary reference there for you.
Is that right, Ian?
I don't know.
I'm not going to get Alan McDonald. So you can jump in the comments if you're watching live. I'm not going to start getting into a Spira debate with Alan McDonald in the comments. We'll jump straight into the news. We've been 18 minutes on now, and I'm not getting into Spiras at this stage of the podcast. So we'll go straight to the news. There's been quite a bit of news recently. I mean, should we confront the elephant in the room first, Craig, as Craig has alluded to now?
Oh well, should we?
Let's just have a look at this then. So, if we cast our minds back to last week, John, let's just have a little listen to this.
Yeah, let's go on then. I can't hear it.
I can't hear anything
I
either.
can't hear it.
That's
Oh, you see that,
magnificent.
guys? It's not
That's
working.
perfect, Cammy.
That's-
Now, I could,
Right.
let's be clear. So if you look at this picture just now, obviously those of us that are on audio podcast will not be able to pick this up. I am clearly wearing an Italy shirt in that picture. That is all I'm saying, guys. What I said, and I'll repeat what I said, I suggested that the Bulls would absolutely and utterly scud Benetton.
Let's have a listen, John. I've got it working now.
And just as Cammy said, we'll see what happens at the end of the season and see where they are.
Yeah.
Just to be very clear with regards to the Rainbow Cup, right? Benetton's Rainbow Cup results, yes, they pumped Glasgow. Let's ignore that for a second.
I never mentioned that. I never talked about that once.
And that's to your credit, Craig. Well done.
Right, so this is the right. So anyone questioning the conference system that is now in place, here you are, right? They beat Zebre by 5 points. They then beat Zebre by 7 points, and they beat Connacht. Right, so you're beating the weakest Irish province, and you're beating your rival, who are utterly mince, twice. They are not Rainbow Cup champions. That is
They're not Rainbow Cup champions, John. What happened at the weekend, John?
Well, I'm delighted to say that Benetton accepted my.
Come on!
Benetton are the Rainbow Cup champions.
They obviously seen me wearing my Italy top and said, "You know what? That baldy guy there, he is our inspiration." They pinned me up in their dressing room. I'm certain of it.
On the dartboard.
I mean,
It was like
probably.
Jim sat round the Italians giving it the full Jim Tell for Everest
Yeah.
speech. Going, you've seen what they've written in the newspaper. I've John Anderson from the
It's John
Scottish Rugby
Anderson.
podcast.
You know what? I mean, nobody speaks about them, so probably they did.
I honestly was sitting watching the game, and I was sitting there watching it and thinking, oh. And slowly but surely started to smile, and then I got that Jeremy Clarkson smug face on me. It seemed to.
I tuned in about halfway through the first half, and I saw to the end of the first half when they got that try, the penalty try, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to happen." Oh, guys. And then I was kind of like, right, well, the Bulls have the real. And then I was like, the Bulls are like the rubbish South African franchise. How did they win? I started questioning everything about my life.
Maybe Monster Munch in the in a blender sounds good. That's what you're questioning.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the blender came out. I was debating what to do at that point.
So what you're saying is Benetton's Rainbow Cup win is your red pill, blue pill moment, John?
Yeah, basically, yeah. Is this the real life or is this just fantasy? I don't know. Yeah, I mean, good on Benetton, right? Fair play to them. They actually played all right the other day, as much as the South Africans were utterly honking. But it doesn't change. I still stand on this hill that I'm going to die on. The Benetton are rubbish. I'm still going to stand on this hill. They are, and like you guys can argue all you want. They won a made-up cup that was designed.
Yeah, so Alan McDonald says, please can we ask John to say we're never going to win the Six Nations, a Grand Slam or a World Cup, please?
I mean, legitimately, Scotland probably will never win a Six Nations, a Grand Slam or a World Cup. So I think that's fair enough. I will accept that, Alan.
So there we go.
We heard it there. Then there you go. They were absolutely. I'm actually being an Edinburgh fan. I'm a little bit concerned about the next group stage of the new Ultimate Fighting slamming you.
I'll do a solid here, Craig, as well. Edinburgh will never win a meaningful trophy out with the 1872.
That's a slippery thing to say though, because you can just shift what a meaningful trophy is, John, according to your whims.
It may be the 1872 Cup, but it's not a Rainbow Cup, is it, Craig?
I would define a meaningful trophy as being the pro whatever we're on now, the Ultimate Fighting Championship, or any of the European trophy. I'll give you even the kid on the Diddy Cup. I'll give you the Diddy Cup because obviously you're in that and we're no, but I'll give you that.
Okay, we'll come back. I'll bookmark this, Craig. We'll come back to it.
Absolutely.
So, speaking of the URC or the URC or the Ultimate Rugby Championship or the United Rugby Championship, as I think it actually is, the news this week is that, to no surprise whatsoever, the Free Sports or what the Premier Sports have got the rights to all the games, all the Scottish games. And they're broadcasted apart from two, but we haven't found out which two they haven't got. But I'm suspecting that BBC are going to broadcast two legs of the 1872 over Christmas, is my guess.
It's not even. Yeah. We've worked out that they actually have the rights to all the games. It's just that they've said it based on Glasgow and Edinburgh playing each other. And they've went, oh yeah, so that's actually one fixture as opposed to
have they,
two.
or is it not that they're saying exclusive? I think the way I read it was we've got exclusive rights to 54 out of the 56 games involving, or whatever it is, 36 or
like it was
games.
34 out of 36.
34 out of 36 games. So I'm assuming there are two games that are going to be simultaneously broadcast then.
Yeah,
that's how I read it. Yeah, that's
fair enough.
So potentially we might have some coverage on the BBC.
Yeah.
What channel's the game on? Christ.
Here we go. Sky Sports, mate.
I mean, it's not. I suppose the good thing. I'm not going to. I know people have got their issues with Premier Sports, and Craig, you touched on this last week in terms of some of the pundits involved, but from looking at it in the kind of from a neutral point of view, putting aside the punditry, the fact that you can watch every single game on Premier Sports is a bonus, because there's not many sports packages or sports broadcasters these days that have more than one rugby competition, and with Premier you're getting the top 14 now as well.
Yeah, I've my missus is fed up with our recording box full of Pro 14 games that I haven't watched yet, because that's just you get so much on the weekend from them. So I have my pluses and minuses with Premier Sports, but for me, if I'm not at an Edinburgh game, I can watch any of them with Premier Sports, and also with the some of the more tasty games in Ireland and in Wales.
Yeah, Ian, are you pleased it stayed on Premier Sports, or secretly hoping it might come back to free to air?
I don't ever think realistically it was going to come back to free to air. So, I mean, like with Craig, I've got some issues with Premier Sports. I've only got the web player thing, but it really frustrates me that you can't rewind it and stuff like that. And also, if you pause it, it seems to crash.
They've said they're putting a lot of investment into the web player.
Good. Is that why their pundits are so cheap?
I wondered whether there was a certain amount. What was interesting?
Chris Patterson, obviously, who are excellent, and Dougie Vipond.
Yeah,
Doogie's my absolute spirit animal.
Dougie, who is reading out one of the tasks on Friday night.
Woo!
Task setter general.
Yeah. So no, I mean I've not really got a kind of. I suppose it's hard because you kind of. John, because we've got some skin in the game with this, but I generally don't have an issue with the Scottish pundits or the Scottish coverage. If anything, they tend to be a bit less biased than the others, and that, maybe that does or doesn't help. I don't know.
I think they're overly unbiased, which I've mentioned in the past. Like, they maybe don't stick up for Scottish rugby as much as they could, but then the argument is, should they really? Like, I mean, a lot of rugby fans out there, even rugby fans of right. So anybody that's looking at Wales Online and going, "Aye, this is like the absolute gospel of rugby," is probably an idiot and probably doesn't need converting. So, like, do we need to really be telling these people about rugby? Probably not. They're not going to listen anyway, so it's wasted breath. So I think I genuinely think the Scottish pundits do a really good job of, and particularly, like, I think Chris Patterson in particular does a really good job of actually analysing the game as opposed to just like thinking of Andy Nicol in the Six Nations and just saying whatever comes to his mind. It's no really good. Chris Patterson's a brilliant pundit, and Rory Lawson as well is excellent. So I think we've got a good base to build on from there, but it's just a case of whether the Irish paymasters allow them to say what they're wanting to say.
Yeah, and whether or not we get more parity of coverage for the away games, I'm guessing, Craig.
Yeah, I think maybe the one I was complaining about was a little bit because it was a dead rubber and because we're kind of in the throes of a third wave or whatever it is. They didn't really want to drag people down to Wales to comment on the game, but I just, as I say, I would just like them to be a little bit more balanced and spend a bit more time talking about and actually knowing the players' names and what they actually do on the park.
It struck me a little bit like I wondered whether or not they were, and it's hard because of the pandemic, and I don't know if you can't really kind of know what effect the pandemic might or might not have had, but whether or not Premier Sports were running out of money a little bit. Because Sunset and Vine pulled out, didn't they, towards halfway through the contract? Yeah. And it definitely felt like, what was the product that was launched initially felt very good, felt very coherent. I think you tended to have different pundits at away games, and it felt a bit more balanced, but it wasn't without its technical problems, but it felt like a decent product. But towards the end, it felt more like kind of watching something like Kabaddi on Channel 4 at 3 a.m, as opposed to, watching a primetime fixture at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon.
They seem to be calling it in a lot more after the Sunset and Vine issue. There seemed to be, and people looked at it and went, well, is that going to result in a decline in the standards? And it did. There seemed to be less cameras, there seemed to be less analysis, less commentary, and more. It seemed to be more Irish centric after that. So we'll see how it goes, because the Irish are obviously very upset about the latest iteration of what we're doing. So let's see how it goes, eh?
Yeah, and I think the RTE have got in. I think RTE have got the rights
Yeah.
in Ireland. So again, that'll be interesting. Now they won't be sharing broadcasters.
So the Premier Sports were very much saying that they have the rights for the first time in Ireland.
But I thought RTE had it.
RT may have rights, but I think Premier Sports have got also
Got
they're
some
able
rights.
to. Yeah, because they didn't have it before. Because as you know, attest, if you're playing Leinster away, you had to previously you had to find a VPN to ensure that you were in Republic of Ireland. But now I think Premier Sports have the rights to it as
There
well.
we go.
But I
Yeah.
thought Premier Sports and Air Sports were the same company, just a
They're
different name.
not. They are not.
They're
It's
not,
just they should be.
Which one's Satanta?
Premier Sports.
The other strange news that came out today, speaking of Premier Sports, is the Super Six is going to be on Free Sports.
Yeah, that's quite a coup, that, I think.
Mhm.
Well, I'm going to put my cynical hat on.
Oh, here it
Here
goes.
it comes.
Is it a baseball cap or a trilby or what kind of...
I don't just
yeah.
picture
Like,
Name your hat, Cammy. You can't go saying I'm going to put my cynical hat
2
on.
seconds.
He's going to go get a hat. Yes.
It's going to be a jauntily cocked hat.
Oh, it
Can I
is.
put my headphones? I have got an actual hat on. Look,
Oh, it is.
It has to be at a jaunty angle, though.
What's the Del Monte
Oh.
man?
triangle hat.
It's a
Yeah.
Del Monte,
This is great content for audio listeners. That's not going to stay on off my headphones.
Just to be clear, Cammy looks like an absolute idiot.
I'm going to take that off. That's not staying on, and that's going to cause me all sorts of problems. I don't know whether the previous arrangement that the SRU had was that they funded the BBC coverage of the Super Six.
Yep.
And so it was hosted on the BBC. I think effectively they were paying the BBC to put out some games and do some coverage. I think the SRU were producing it as well for the BBC to do. So the wee laddie with his SRU, gillet on, walking up and down the side of Maya side, talking about the games and stuff. I struggle to understand why at this stage in the Super Six evolution, why someone like Premier Sports would come and pay money to put it out there, because like we were saying last week when we were talking about the Super Six, and I've got we have some kind of fact checking that we want to get right about some comments we've had since that. But if you think about the Super Six as a product, it's not saying, look, you're going to see guys returning from injury. You're going to see the best players returning from injury. You're going to see up and coming Scottish players. We're saying, well, you might do, but here's some semi-professional rugby in Scotland. And it just, I'm being cynical, John.
Yeah, I've raised my eyebrows a few times. Yeah, no, I don't think you're being cynical. I think there is an ulterior motive. Now, I think it's worth noting that Free Sports, if you go on to the STV player and go to their website, you get Free Sports, right? So Free Sports is wider than Premier Sports. However, I think there is something. The SRU partnered with Premier Sports a few years ago for their summer tests. The SRU have clearly shown a willingness to sell the rights rightly to the people that will give them the most money. So I think there's maybe a bit of a long game play here that says, you know what, we're going to give you some semi-professional content at probably quite a reasonable price. We're probably also going to give you some test matches near future for your Premier Sports coverage. And we would quite like to be part of it. But bear in mind, right, I think it's really important to emphasise this, and this might be some people's hands in the ruck, but the SRU for a long, long time had a partnership with Viagogo. They are not adverse to partnering with the scum of the earth. Now, I'm not saying that Premier Sports are the scum of the earth. However, I am saying that, they are pay TV, and if they're paying over the odds for semi-professional rot then they're clearly saying something. There's going to be money in it for Premier at some point.
Yeah. Craig, are we being harsh, or should we just be grateful? I suppose we've been asking for a while to have more Scottish rugby on the telly. We'd like to see more Scottish rugby on the telly. Are we, should we just be pleased that there is more Scottish rugby on the telly?
I'm just one of those people. I'm quite happy to sit back and go, give me rugby on the telly. And if you're going outside and partnering up with the scum of the earth, well, give me more rugby on the telly. So I'm just whatever I can do to get as more. Yeah, I'm just happy to see some Scottish rugby on the telly, and we'll get to see some of these guys that are being paid some money to play some rugby, and we can actually have a look at it without having to travel. Especially a lot of the other people within the UK, within Scotland, who are at least an hour and a half away from a game, they'll get to watch the games on Free Sports. So I think it's a positive move.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say before the podcast, I was thinking, maybe we talked last week about pitching a Scottish Rugby magazine show to the BBC.
Yep.
And I was going to say maybe we should do the same at Premier Sports, but I think, John, you single-handedly have just destroyed all chances of that.
I mean, that assumes that they listen, but yeah. I mean, I think if they could sell me on it, that's important.
And,
Like
if they are listening, they'll note that me and Cammy and Craig have said nothing bad about Premier Sports.
Absolutely. And I'm just hoping that Bill Gates isn't following me with my chip in my arm that they put in earlier on.
Ian, mate, if they're listening back, fine well, they have went back through previous episodes and you have absolutely destroyed Premier Sports.
He's taking us down with him, Ian. Don't listen to him.
It's true, mate.
Yeah,
all hail our Irish overlords.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. I kind of I would agree with Craig. It is. I feel slightly cynical about how it's come to it that we've got Super 6 on Free Sports. But like Craig says, I also think, well, at least we've got it out there. At least it's easy to watch. At least it's easy to find. And the other games, I think there could be highlights put out as well. So
let's be clear. I subscribe to Premier Sports. I am going to watch this. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm the same.
I think the other thing I just want to kind of correct it wasn't a problem on our end, but just kind of correct an impression we may have given. We had a comment last week saying that we were being, I think, reverse snobs about the number of Glasgow teams in the Super 6. So how many Glasgow teams applied was the question, and it was 2, if you include Ayr as Glasgow teams. So we had Glasgow Hawks, and we also had there was also Ayr as well. Yep. There was an application from so you had, here it is, Ayr, Boroughmuir, Curry Chieftains, Dundee, Edinburgh Academicals, Gala, Glasgow Hawks, Hawick, Heriots, Melrose, Stirling County, and Watsonians. So our point was that there was a reasonable spread of teams across the country, and yet the majority went to Edinburgh.
Yes.
That was our point. So it wasn't reverse snobbery, it was reverse snobbery based on facts.
And I believe the point also centred on our implication that there was no poor people in Edinburgh, which that was.
It's all relative, though. How do you measure? That
was not the point we were making. We were suggesting that there was an implication that Glasgow, the Keith Russell affair, shone a light on the fact that poor Glasgow areas were being ignored for rugby players, and that was what we were pointing out.
Yeah.
Edinburgh is a totally different beast.
Yeah. And to be honest, on my side of things, I was more saying, look, I think they've missed a trick. To open it out to a wider audience. I wasn't. I'm from Edinburgh. I'm an Edinburgh boy, but I may have gone north and over the bridges. I've found the bridges and actually paid the toll to go into Fife. But
you don't just drive around, Craig.
Well, that was suggested, but that would cost more fuel. That's a different story. But I just felt that they missed a trick. They just, you've just as we always talk about, getting more and more people watching rugby and are interested in rugby, and they could have had other teams, and it could have been a little bit bigger. But anyway. I'm not going to get into that
We're
anymore.
not going to go through those arguments again. We just want to
Yes.
address that we weren't. That the point wasn't that we were being reverse snobs about Edinburgh. It was more based on, as Craig says, it was an opportunity to open up to different markets, for want of a better expression. And as John said, there were other teams that were in there and ended up being Edinburgh heavy. So that's where
the facts remain that the Super Six ended up being 3 teams in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Like, that's the facts of it. It doesn't matter like what was considered. There was no Glasgow teams picked. Ayr is not a Glasgow team. It's an hour away from Glasgow. It's not a Glasgow team. Glasgow had won the Pro 14. Edinburgh haven't. There was an opportunity there to build on a growing legacy in Glasgow of rugby. People are starting to watch rugby in Glasgow, and there was an opportunity to build on that, and the SRU completely and utterly failed. And I will argue with anyone that comes at me with this. They completely failed in their jurisdiction of Scottish rugby in that moment. It was a disgrace.
There we go.
But they've given you a Scottish rugby store though, haven't they?
They have, and they're doing a massive discount on it just now because nobody's going to it.
Because there's no rugby out.
There's no rugby fans in Glasgow because they don't have a bloody rugby team to follow.
Anyway, so the other bit of news is there's been fixtures announced. Craig, I'm excited because we get to find out when Berwick and How Fife play.
Yeah, come on. We're going to get a chance to send you back with your tails between your legs.
No, I don't think after we finish top of the table, we should have denied promotion. Top of the table we were. So September and February, I think, are the Berwick and How. I don't care about the other fixtures. Berwick and How are playing each other September and February for purposes of this podcast.
Important news in the first fixture of the season, Ross McDowell, friend of the pod and fellow bandmate of me and Ian, has revealed that Shawlands and Bishopton will be competing in the first game of the season. Bishopton being my local haunt and Ian's kid-on haunt, and Shawlands being Ross McDowell's haunt. So it's going to be a battle of wills.
I was going to say we could maybe have a live podcast from Berwick as a kind of halfway house there, just when we're playing down at Berwick.
I mean, I'm okay with that. Let's do that. I'll be the arbiter.
So that's good. I mean, it all feels like it's coming back to normal a little bit. So it's nice to see the fixtures coming out, see photos and videos across the country, people back in training and stuff. So it's good. We feel like we're getting there. We're not just going to be people playing in front of empty stadiums. Speaking of largely empty stadiums, let's talk about Murrayfield at the weekend. Sorry, Craig. It's old habits of being on this podcast for day 2.
I just sit and listen. I'm no longer just wait. We've had record season tickets sold for Edinburgh, so I think we're going to show a few people how to fill out what John would say a tent would look like.
Yeah,
that's a different story.
I mean, there's filling out a tent and there's filling out a stadium, mate.
So let's move on and talk about the Lions, because of course. It's time for this.
It's the legally mandated Lions chat. The legally mandated Lions chat. We've heard so much about it that it makes us sick, but we've still got to chat about who Gatlin's gonna pick.
And who has Warren Gatlin picked? He picked 4 Scottish players, but then Hamish Watson promptly got concussed, and now there's only 3 in the starting 15. Ian, that Lions, I mean, it's the first test in a dead rubber against Japan, so I don't think we can read too much into it, particularly in The Guardian. We're getting Ned Nickerson and not about the fact there's no English players in the starting 15, even though their season's just finished, and they've only all just joined up with the squad. But it's hard to read anything into it, but at the same time, it's quite nice to see 3 Scottish players, although when it was 4, it was announced, it's nice to see that in the starting lineup.
Yeah, I suppose there might even have been a little bit of playing to the crowd, obviously. How many people going? Is it 12,000?
12, yep.
12.
Yeah. Obviously, we get to see Doohan in a red shirt, so I think it'll be important he really puts a marker down because that left wing spot is open for grabs. I'm looking forward to it. Actually, the pack. The pack is pretty much what I would pick, except Faletau at 8, and then Suz and Wyn Jones is a bit of a coin toss. But no, it's a good opportunity for the Murrayfield crowd who get to go to see some top quality players. Although there has been a few people complaining about getting their tickets or not getting their tickets, and then finding out their tickets have been put up for sale again and what have you, or
Let's
people
get-
being moved, people with mobility issues being moved and stuff like that.
Let's get on to that in Hands of the Ruck, shall we?
Okay.
Good shout. We'll get on that in hands in the Craig. I mean, I was quite excited. It's quite nice to, I think it's kind of something slightly nostalgic in you to see, the Lions with 2 Scottish props.
Yeah, nothing like it. It makes it warms your heart, doesn't it? No, but then I think I think Suz has got a good chance of being a test loosehead, because he is well known within the rugby community as one of the best looseheads there is. Everybody from ourselves all the way through other pundits that are out there have all said that Rory Sutherland is a very good loosehead. So I was really pleased to see him named. Xander was the one that I raised my eyebrows because I thought Furlong would be nailed on. So I was really pleased to see Xander being named.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, John? Because I mean, Kevin Miller's done a series of articles for us on the blog about, which Scottish player realistically has a chance of making the test side, and there's a lot of cause for optimism in those articles when he's analysed the numbers. I think Rory Sutherland maybe surprised me with some of the numbers that Kevin was throwing around. I think the other thing that's interesting is stats will only tell you so much because you can only play how you're asked to play by your international and your club coach.
Correct.
And for the Lions, it's different. You'll be asked to do different things and play a different role. So this is what, for me, this genuinely fascinates me. I think because we haven't been in this role, this position before as Scotland fans, where it feels genuinely like every Scottish player there, maybe with the exception of Doohan, although some people might disagree with that, has a genuine chance of being in the Test 15.
Yeah.
And they've got a chance to demonstrate that they can adapt to somebody else, to a different way of playing that isn't the Glasgow way, isn't the Edinburgh way, isn't the Gregor Townsend way. It's the Lions way. And if they're good players, they'll be able to adapt and play and do the role they're asked to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I can't believe I'm the guy that's going to be handed this role, but actually in previous podcasts, I assume it's probably fair enough. Warren Gatland came out and said that it was really important for Scottish players to be given the opportunity to play in front of Scottish fans and highlighted that fact. That confirmed a lot of people's suspicions that this is just the test match in Scotland is just oh no, we've screwed you over for many years. We need you to be on board. And then the picket to say that as a coach is utterly disgraceful. Like I was really like I'm all on board with. I think the Scottish players that have been picked are there legitimately, and I think they do have a chance at Test games. But to say that as a coach is utterly disgraceful. Like,
I disagree. I disagree
with you. It's the Geography 6 2021. It's ridiculous.
I disagree. I don't think you can have it always. We can't say that they've ignored Scotland and Scottish players and then got upset when they come to Scotland and then pick Scottish players and say, we're trying to do something nice for you because we quite like you to feel. I think I read it a different way, and I know we're kind of jaded with Warren Gatland and the way he treats Scottish players. I read it as, we want you to feel part of this, and we acknowledge that you haven't felt part of it in the past, and partly that's down to us.
There's a better way to do that, though. There's a better way to do that. You don't placate supporters by saying, "Look, we're going to bring a test match to you, and we're going to pick your players for that test match because it's you guys." There's a better way to do that, and maybe it'll. Do you know what? Maybe it'll pan out through the tour. but it's just a really, really crap way to start the tour off.
I have to stand up there and say no. I think it's.
I
I think
don't mind if you stand up and say no. That's fine.
as far as I'm concerned, I tend to be a yin for your yang anyway, John. But
You do.
but what I actually think the pressure is on the Scottish players because they're basically being said, right, on you go. There's your position. We're giving you a starting chance. Go out and show us what you can do. And you're in Murrayfield and you're in front of Scottish fans. Now the big issue is going to be, are they going to perform? Because they're going to get crowds. Some of them are going to be playing in front of crowds for the first time for a long time, and they have to perform. If they don't perform, then you're going to see them you're not going to see them in a test team because there's plenty. Maybe I honestly still do believe that Suz has got a good chance on a regular test place, but we could see a few of our Scottish players disappear or disappear from view if they don't perform in this game, and they have, so it's going to be an interesting one.
I think for me, and I think that's an interesting point, Craig, that there's a temptation to look at this and go, it's only Japan. But from a Scottish perspective, Japan they beat us in the group stages of the World Cup. We've started slowly against them in the past, but you can't do that as a Lion. The Lions will be expected to absolutely, run riot against Japan, Ian. And I don't know if it's maybe an opportunity for the Scottish players and the Scottish lads to kind of show that they can show that ruthlessness that they've maybe lacked in the past.
I just think it's a chance for them. Someone like, actually, one of the people I'd forgot, I would have swapped Furlong for Ferguson as well. I think we all know that Tig Furlong has got the number 3 jersey sort of nailed down. But it's a chance for Ferguson and Suz and even Doohan to prove that, yes, we are worthy of a test squad. If they can put on a performance, like you said, the Lions should really be expected to give Japan a bit of a doing. If you look at the teams on paper, but it's an opportunity certainly for those Scottish guys to say, I am good enough. When Japan beat us, we were in a different place, and now I'm a better player, and I've gone and scored a hat-trick against Japan. Pick me for the Lions calendar.
But is it not the opposite of that? Is it not an excuse to say that the Lions team should be absolutely doing this this Japan team? Should they, if a Scottish player doesn't perform in that team, they're gone. That's ridiculous. If an Irish player doesn't perform in this team, they're not gone. If a Welsh player doesn't perform in this team, they're not gone. It's complete and utter double standards.
But I think they're coming from those. Those players are coming from a different. Those players are starting from a different level than our players.
Are they though? Are they? Well, some of them are not.
I don't know. I kind of think I think Scotland still haven't. Right, we said this in the last week. Scotland still haven't won anything.
No, they haven't. No, absolutely, they haven't, and that's fine. But actually, if you look at on paper, if you look at the players that are involved, like if you're saying that Xander Fagerson if he has a bad game on Saturday, he's done. Compared to the props he's up against, that's nonsense.
I don't know.
But hold on. I'm not saying they're sorry, Cammy.
No, you're going, Craig.
I'm not saying they're done. I'm saying that they're not going to get a test place because what you have to remember is Xander Fagerson is up against 2 Lions tightheads. They've both played as Lions tightheads, and they're both on form. They're both on form. Now, don't get me wrong. Xander's on form, and I have slowly come around to Xander as a tight head prop. I think he's developed incredibly well over the time that he's played. But as I said, the reason I'm talking about Suz so much is because he hasn't got the competition now that they don't have Porter there that could slip into the loose head or the tight head coverage. He's only got one guy up against him, which is Wyn Jones, and there's a very, very good chance that he could get a test place instead of him. But I think Xander has got a lot of pressure on him, and yes, fair enough. he's got the opportunity to go out in front of the Scottish crowd and perform. But I think it's a test. I think it's go on. Let's see what you can do in front of you, in front of friends and family, in front of everybody in Scotland. Because you've always been going on at us about we don't have, and I don't choose enough Scottish players in the Lions. So there's your players. They're on the pitch. Let's see them perform.
Let's see how this pans out during the tour then.
Yeah, very much so.
I don't think. I mean, I think, and as well, I know Finn Russell's just joined, but he joined at the same time as Owen Farrell, and Owen Farrell was on the bench ahead of Finn Russell. I personally think that's because Finn Russell didn't turn up in his full stash and just turned up in his normal tracky bottoms when he arrived in camp. It's a classic Finn thing. Everybody else is there with their full branded masks and tracksuit, and he's there in his black tracky bottoms and white trainers.
When he turned up, he's like, right, where's the bar?
How many beers, Gregor? How many beers am I allowed on this tour? Can I have more beers?
His Lions bag clanking with Buckfast in it.
No, but I mean, I don't know. I feel excited and energized about the Lions. I think, last time round, John, you were on the podcast, 4 years ago, and we were, looking up alternative things that you could do during the Lions test, like take a cruise with Michael Barrymore and John Virgo. It was. We
were, and my concern is that this test, and it was always the concern when it was announced, and I know people say I'm a negative Nelly and all that jazz, and I don't really care. Like, it just seems like a placation tool. It seems like right, we're going to give guys a start, and it seemed like that when it was announced as well. We're going to play all these Scots in this game, and you know what? You're probably not going to feature for the rest of the tour, or you might get a wee midweek game. You're dirt trackers. That's your role.
Do you know what did it? Do you know what did it for me? And it was this morning when I was sat on the sofa with my daughter watching the football from last night, and I said to her, she's 6.
Yep.
And I said, do you know this is the first time in 23 years that Scotland have been in a tournament like this? I said, I was 16. I was 16 last time this happened. This is this, and she was like, "Wow!" I was like, "We're really bad at football." Yeah. Scotland. This doesn't happen. This is, I was trying to kind of impress upon her. This is it, and she was disappointed that we'd lost 3-0 when the goal went in, but 3-1. She was excited when Scotland scored, but I said, this doesn't happen, but I was kind of starting to think, well, that's quite a special thing to share, because if this doesn't happen for another 23 years, she's going to remember getting up this morning and watching the highlights with me.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting up planning to watch with our youngest. He's decided sister likes football, so I like rugby. So we booked Saturday afternoon. We're going to sit down and watch the Lions, and that's what struck me is I wasn't bothered about the Lions last time round, and our daughter was probably roughly the same age as my son is now, and I wasn't bothered about it. I didn't bother putting on the telly. I watched the highlights sometimes. Like we talked about anything but on the podcast because what was the point? But this time I kind of feel genuinely excited about it. And I think, well, God, this could be, it feels longer term, this feels like the start of something for Scotland. And if Scotland can carry on the performances, it feels back to what the Lions used to mean to me when I was younger. I remember the 97 tour, that was kind of like peak me being interested in rugby as a youngster. How exciting it was to have Scottish players in with the Lions. And you think there's a generation of Scottish fans, and I suppose that's who Warren Gatland is speaking to, the young fans that didn't remember that it's been years since we've had, the bad years of Scottish rugby. They remember the good years of Scottish rugby, and all of a sudden we've got a reasonable amount of representation in a Lions squad, and you feel part of it. And it's nice for them to come up to Murrayfield and bring it on the road to Scotland, I suppose. And us cynical old heads, John, I think we're right to feel aggrieved that we only got two names last time round, and a couple of the Geography 6. But I'm trying to.
It's the Geography 2021. I'm disgusted in it. I'm absolutely disgusted in it. Like it was. The biggest problem I have with it is when the Japan fixture was announced, people went, I bet he picks like 6 Scots for that fixture. It's an absolute. It's so predictable, and like honestly, right. I'm getting abuse for this online and stuff already, so it's fine. We'll look at this at the end of the tour. We'll see if any Scots actually get played.
Can I just put one positive thing to you about it, John?
Yes, go for it, mate.
What you got to understand is I'm going to name drop here, and I do apologise for it.
Go
But
for it. Yes.
I was coached by Dave Rollo, who is a Scottish and Irish Lion, and also an ex-Scotland player in the '60s. Dave, I had that person within the club. He is absolutely lauded in the club that we have, and he is a local community hero. What I love about this, no matter what anybody says, we now have these players who are going to wear the red jersey, and each of their clubs are going to have someone who's going to affect the kids who are coming through rugby, and they are going to be able to say, he's from my club and he was a British and Irish Lion. And I think we get lost sometimes in what's going on, and because we talk about it so much, because now it's getting the announcements are getting longer and longer, and more drawn out and more drawn out. I'm just excited for the weekend, and you're going to you've got some players there that are going to, for example, Suz is going to go back to his club and say, look, his jersey is going to be on the wall, and kids are going to be able to look up to him and say, he's my hero. And I think that's a very, very big plus point. And
you're absolutely right, Craig. You're absolutely right, and that's a very fair point, and I take that completely on board. The cynic in me sees otherwise, but you know what? You're absolutely right. So these kids will see that. That's fine.
Yeah, I think I would say something the Lions are really good at doing is that connection to the club. They've been doing a really good. Fill Your Boots Rugby. If you don't follow them on Twitter, they kind of connect to do a lot of chat about clubs and grassroots rugby around the UK. They've been doing a series with Canterbury where they're talking to Lions clubs. And I think that's something that the Lions are really good at, staying connected to the clubs. There's a really nice video today that it's Thank a Teacher Day.
Right.
Today in the UK, and the Lions have done a video where they've got the Lions to thank their teachers. Xander looked really sheepish, so I don't know what kind of... Well, in fact, we know what shenanigans Xander got up to at school, because it's in the Strathallan yearbook that he did a giant slip and slide. But he looked very sheepish when he gave his thank you. But there was a nice moment. It was one of the coaches and Owen Farrell stood together, and they've both been obviously not been at the school together at the same time. Both been at the same, attended the same school in Wigan. And it's little stories like that, like Suz and Hogg, going through school together, and now they're on a Lions tour. It's those little stories, you're right, Craig, that kind of make it.
Yeah. But that's the thing that's for me, because as I say, it's just in my background, I always looked up to Dave Rollo, and I think there are these guys are going to they deserve the amount of work they put in nowadays. Okay, fair enough, now they get paid for it, but to do their job, but it's the amount of work they put into this, they should be lauded, and they should have their jerseys in their rugby club walls, and really it's a fantastic thing for them.
Yeah. There's lots of other news that we could cover tonight. There's the women's sevens are off to Moscow on a qualifying tour, and we've got some players back from the Olympic qualifying team. Unfortunately, there's a number of Scottish players didn't make the cut for the Olympics, but fortunately there are some that have made the cut for the Olympics, which is good. It's got a reasonable amount of representation in the men's and the women's team. Given it's particularly the women's team, I think is it Hannah Smith's made the... I forget her name. It's made the GB women's team, which, given the the state of Scottish women's sevens, is a heck of an achievement. I think it was a heck of an achievement for the number of women players that we got in the the trial squad anyway. But they're off to try and qualify for the Commonwealth Games now as well. There was the under-20s played against, lost to Ireland. So the under-20s Six Nations is going on at the minute. So we could talk a lot about those things, but I'm conscious of time, so we're going to move on. We're going to do this now. Yes, it's Hands in the Ruck. It's our Any Other Business section of the podcast. I haven't done a shout out to this on any of our social media channels. I normally do, but I forgot. I was busy today at work. I was training people all day, so I didn't have a chance to do it. If you're watching live and you've got any Hands in the Ruck, feel free to throw it in the comments, and we'll happily discuss it. Who am I going to start with? John, I'll start with you because you're on mute and you've just taken a drink, and I feel like I want to put you on the spot. Well, go on. What's your Hands in the Ruck?
It was a rather fast drink, wasn't it? Yeah. So I indicated slightly earlier that might want to discuss Lions ticketing. People have got their knickers in a twist regarding their allocation to Lions tickets. Ian will probably support me in this, in that a few people have posted on relatively popular Facebook pages that they were upset that their Lions tickets had been changed. For me, it strikes me as absolute entitlement that people. Yes, you've bought your tickets, but you've bought your tickets within unprecedented times. And you were always buying it in the assumption that, do you know what? You're lucky your tickets haven't completely cancelled. Based on the numbers, they probably should be. If you look at the COVID numbers from today for Edinburgh, your tickets probably should be cancelled completely, guys. So how about we step down from our high horse and we accept that you've been given tickets to go and see the Lions? That's great. You'll have a great time. But moaning about it on social media is utter nonsense.
Yeah.
And
I think what bothered me about it, I mean, I think there's people who've been moved for specific, who've got mobility issues and have chosen this tickets specifically and they've been moved. That's fair shout.
yeah,
By all means,
that's reasonable.
That's reasonable to be upset by that. I think people that have been moved, have paid top whack and been moved to different parts of the stadiums. I kind of take your point, John. Look, you're one of the lucky ones. You're getting to see the Lions. I think the thing that also bothers me, I think it's a bit of, look, I can understand if you haven't got your tickets and all of a sudden you see tickets going out for competitions and tickets going to sponsors. I understand why that would be upsetting. But we have to appreciate that in every sporting event, tickets go to sponsors, tickets are released through competitions. And yes, you've lost out, but that's always going to happen because ultimately the sponsors, money from the sponsors is what helps the sport carry on going. The money you've paid for your ticket is a drop in the ocean to what the sponsors will pay in return for a couple of tickets.
You can guarantee 99% of the people that are moaning about their tickets, your tickets are not the sponsors' tickets that are getting sold. I can guarantee you that, guys. Unless you have Murrayfield front and centre main stand tickets that are next to Warren Gatland, which they're not, because that's
the
Ian's
comfy
tickets.
seats.
That's
the comfy
Ian's
seats.
tickets in the press box. Then I can guarantee you it's not your tickets that are getting sold. So, guys, you just want to wind it in. It's fine. Like,
Yeah. The Viagogo thing, I think it's we've talked about this before on the podcast, Craig. I think that it's disappointing. I think that for those that have been lucky enough to get the tickets, that there are tickets appearing on reselling websites, given that, some people got in the ballot, got the tickets, and some people didn't.
Yeah, I was being a frustrated Scotland fan, not being able to get tickets because of a certain reason, and then going on to see what there is and looking at the prices that are on Viagogo and things like that. It just takes all the love for the SRU that I do have out of it. Sometimes I just feel it's just, all of the rugby clubs get their allocations, and you support your own rugby club by buying your tickets through that, or you buy online. But these secondary vendors are just taking the soul out of the game and soul out of the fans, and money out of the fans' pockets.
It's not hard to stop it.
Exactly.
No reselling.
Yeah,
that's it. You can, there's loads of ways that different competitions have done it over time, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We've got one in off the. This is on Twitch. Maisie J says England fans' reactions to Saturday starting 15 with her hands in the ruck. I think that's fair. I mean, the Guardian lost it, Ian, as always.
I've not actually read it.
It was just like it's the first time in 73 years that there isn't a. It made it sound like the bloody Ravens in the Tower of London. The first time in 73 years there isn't an Englishman starting in a Lions 15.
Right,
we demand a pound of flesh.
Their postseason's still going.
I know.
Yep.
Like Saracens have just secured promotion, so they've probably been on the lash for 3 days. Well, especially if it's Alex Goods leading the charge, then they're probably still on the lash right now. And so obviously they might not be up to their fitness, might not be up to the standards of Test rugby if they've been playing second tier for a while, and they'll be getting drilled in camp. Yeah, I don't. Well, typical Wayne and was it Kitson by any chance?
I was Kitson, yeah.
Oh, what a surprise!
They're just off a plane. There's no way that they're going to start having 5 days of, this is, all of a sudden they're into Jersey. This is your teammates. These are the people you're going to have to play with. There's no chance they're going to get straight onto the park.
Here's a
It's
line
crazy.
out book like this thick. Learn
Aye.
this.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But Owen Farrell, guys. But Owen Farrell.
Oh,
Has been voted by his fellow players. He got the most votes of all the players to join the leadership group.
Yeah,
that's
yippee.
because there's the most English people in the squad.
I know, and also it's that there's most English people in the squad. And look, I think as plenty of people have talked, democracy doesn't work. Most people voted for Owen Farrell. People also voted for Brexit.
Yep.
People voted for Donald Trump.
Absolutely.
Democracy is broken. That's what we've discovered.
Craig, I'll come to you. What's your hands in the ruck?
My hands in the ruck. We'll move away from Scottish rugby for a little while, and is our Gallagher Premiership lauding the Exeter Chiefs. They came back and they managed to win this because all their fans were doing the tomahawk chop. I'm sorry, they are a governing body of a championship, and they need to stop that now because that's ridiculous. I'm sorry, it just wound my ticket. This is, I have enough trouble with BT letting them play. Not cutting the tannoy in the stadium, playing it as loud as they possibly can. This is wrong. Everybody knows it's wrong, apart from people in Exeter. It's time, and some people in Exeter say it's wrong as well. It's time to stop this, and they don't need backup from the Premiership.
Yeah.
Craig, see, we could be on the same page, buddy.
Plus, I was waiting on Cammy playing the woke klaxon as well. But
No, it's fine. The
No,
woke
hands in
klaxon
the
is
rucks.
not applicable. Hands in the ruck. The woke klaxon is
right,
it's,
okay,
it's
that's
only
fine.
if during general chat we get the woke klaxon out. During
You are
Okay, I am a
hands in the ruck,
newbie.
it's a
therefore.
safe space. It's a safe space.
One-
No, I agree, Craig. I think that's
gazillion%, Craig.
it's a bit like that. It's. I think you're right. The Exeter, to a certain extent, it's their club, and we, you've got the Exeter Chiefs for Change doing sterling work in talking about First Nations peoples and the impact that all this has on them, and raising that while still supporting Exeter as a team. But as a governing body, you need to do better, and you need to recognise that the tomahawk chop is not an appropriate thing. And I would say, I think we can all talk about this. We probably all have been in positions where we've done stuff in the past and we've sung stuff in stadiums that we know now is completely unacceptable. I've been in sport. I mean, I've been in Hampden with everybody singing the Jimmy Hill song, years ago, and laughing about it. I know now that's not. I wouldn't sing that song now because I know it's not acceptable because it's homophobic. But and it wasn't right at the time either. But so just because you've always done it doesn't mean you should continue to do it. And I think you've just got. It's been dragged. Something that should be so simple has been dragged into this idea that's a culture war. So now all you have is people that believe they're right arguing against people who have a valid point.
It's just it's amazing. I just Rob Baxter a couple of weeks ago called for the Referees Association to have empathy to players because of the Sam Skinner and Dave Ewers getting cited, etc. And people need to have empathy for these players. What about having empathy for other people? And I think it's getting ridiculous. But it just and it's bubbled away, and you've talked about it quite a lot. I just felt the minute the Premiership started tweeting about it, it is wrong because they're basically backing it up, and I don't
Well,
like it.
Yep.
What I'd like to know is, and it's something that you go, because a few months ago when we were talking about the kind of, the SRU constitution and all of that kind of stuff, when we were talking about all the different votes that go on at club level, and you look at, there's a document that talks about it's the criteria the SRU have for membership as a club. And that's all around that the name has to be acceptable and the branding has to be acceptable and it cannot be offensive.
Mm.
So the Gallagher Premiership, either they have that criteria and they're not applying it. And even if it's that, well, we thought it was okay when the first, when the Exeter Chiefs decided to call themselves that in the late 90s, because this isn't a historic name, it's branded in this, it's the...
Yeah,
it's
they're
early
not
90s,
an old club. This is
No.
not an old thing.
It's 90s, 2000s. So either they've got it and they've not recognized that it's shifted, or they haven't got that criteria at all, in which case that's open to all sorts of abuse for anybody in English rugby. I'm going to form a new club and I'm going to call it something incredibly offensive with an incredibly offensive logo, and you have to admit me because I fulfill all your other criteria.
Cammy, I think you should do that.
Be careful how this discussion goes there, John.
I will be your starting 10 for whatever club you come up with. Just as a protest team.
Yep.
There are teams in America that have hundreds of thousands of fans across America who have cut this out.
Yes,
and they have spent the money. They've changed it. They've changed their branding. The thing is, you can still call them the Exeter Chiefs. They just have to have, they have to knock it off, and just it's so frustrating. I get tongue tied a lot of times.
We've talked about this before. There's a strong history in Cornwall and Devon of chiefs and Cornish chiefs and Celtic chiefs down there, and it'd be so easy to change it. You could do you could change the tomahawk chop to something else. It's not hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculous.
No.
I heard it on the television the other day as well. It always really, I rarely listen to it because I rarely watch Exeter games because I find their branding so offensive. And despite the fact there's a Scottish contingent down there and they're the best team in England, I find it hard to watch them. And I ended up putting the game on the other day and I heard the tomahawk chop and I turned it off completely, and I just went, off you go. No, I'm going to go and do something else. Disgraceful.
Yeah.
There was some good. So I actually heard a lot of Chiefs chant, and I thought, brilliant. They're starting. This is they're starting to change it. They're starting to change it, and then out it came, and I thought, yeah, okay. I was it was anyway.
Yeah. Ian, your hands in the ruck.
So earlier on when you were talking about your kids and how your son's starting to like rugby because his sister likes football. I don't suppose any of you saw the Rugby Champs T-shirts on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So for those of you who haven't, whether it was a T-shirt with the sort of the generally recognised symbols for male and female toilets, or even just male and female, anything, changing rooms, whatever. And then underneath the female one, it said rugby. Football. Underneath the men's one, it said rugby. So here we go. Here's a nice wee bit of misogyny and the same old crap about how footballs are all girly girls. And even then, what's wrong with being a girl? There's many women playing rugby. I think you've maybe noticed.
Yep. As we've talked about, every single woman playing rugby in Scotland at club level and above would give every single one of us on this podcast and a lot of men in Scotland an absolute doing.
Yes, 100%.
You'd have to catch me first, all right?
Mate, Ian,
and they would, Ian, and that's the other
Ian's
issue.
mince, mate.
I've got a car. It's fine.
I've held ruck shields, and I've been hit by many how Harlequin, and oh my god, those girls can play. So no, absolutely, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's the same old crap, isn't it? The football's, this, but then it's actually I kind of lost touch of football for a while. So it'd be nice to kind of reconnect a little bit with the Scottish team, and it is They are going in hard. These are hard guys mentally and physically, and I don't know where this idea comes from. If anything, it's the kind of fetishization of these big hits in rugby.
Yeah,
And I think if that's why you're watching rugby, you're watching the wrong sport. Go and watch UFC.
I think that's a really interesting contrast here. So I've played rugby with men and played rugby with women. I've played football with men. I've played football with women. And I've never if you ask me to name some of the hardest players that I've played with, there is always a combination of women and men. Because do you know what? It's not about your sex or your gender or anything like that. It's about how you approach the sport, what your mentality to the sport
Absolutely,
is.
yeah. Totally agree with that.
We've always come across, and do you know what? I think a lot of men, it's a surprise thing. I think people who are not exposed to these sports, they see the women's sport and they go, "Oh my god, that's quite hard, isn't it? Oh my goodness, they're all about that." When actually it's like this is what the sport looks like. Like if you look at women's rugby and then you look at men's rugby, they're very similar sports because it's just people absolutely mooling each other all over the place. It doesn't matter what gender you are, and it upsets me. And I always remember playing. So, slightly, you might want to throw woke clacks in here, Cam, but it's fine. I remember playing five-a-sides, and we were quite short of players. And I had a girl that I worked with that I'd spoken to for years and years and years. She played professionally football. And I said to her, "Frankie, do you want to come along? Can you invite a couple of players along? We're quite short." And they got there and they were like, "Right, well, we've got enough to play us v you." And the women's team absolutely and utterly destroyed the guys who'd been playing five-a-sides for years and years and years. Of course they did. They were playing at professional level. They were just shy of Glasgow City. Like some of them played for Glasgow City, I believe. So they were playing at such a high level.
They were playing 4D chess, and you guys were playing snakes and ladders.
I mean, we were basically, yeah. I mean, we were just running around hitting things, and these guys were absolutely destroying us. And do you know what? It was so refreshing for me as a player. I was watching it, just going, I knew it was going to happen because I knew the level these guys were playing at, and watching it transpire, I was just like, this is great. This is these guys are going to go away, and hopefully every one of them will think about women's sport. It's not women's sport; it's our sport, played by different people. That's all it is.
Speaking of which, my hands in the ruck is Dan Leo, who's had on the podcast before, who's getting thrown his tuppence in about Laurel Hubbard, the New Zealand weightlifter who's been selected as third choice. And third choice, I would stress, is third choice for New Zealand female weightlifting. Who Laurel Hubbard, for people who don't know, is a trans woman.
Yes, correct.
And has competed for a number of years. I think she transitioned when she was in her 30s. She was previously a male weightlifter, and she's transitioned to, and she's now female, and she is has been in competitions. Now, the interesting thing about Laurel Hubbard is she's one of the examples that's held up by people who are anti-trans women playing women's sport. And I'm careful how I word this because trans women are women, but this is the debate that goes on within sport. That she's held up as an example of here's somebody who's trying to game the system almost, or here's an example of why this is dangerous to women's sport. And what's been really interesting, I think, this week is the New Zealand government. I mean, Jacinda Ardern has come out in support of Laurel Hubbard and said we wish her all the best. She's passed all the things that she needs to pass from the Olympics point of view to compete for New Zealand at the Olympics. Her Australian counterpart, the person she's going to be competing against, said, "I can't wait to be up against her." Exactly. There's a lot of people saying, "Well, a woman of colour in New Zealand has lost out to her." Nobody's spoken to this. We've not had it from that one. That one might be like, well, fair enough. She was better than me, and it was a fair competition. And I think I appreciate it's a sensitive issue, and Ross Tucker on Twitter will throw his tuppence in as a scientist and start talking about biological differences between men and women. And I just think if we're talking about sport as being sport for all, then you have to accept people as they come. And if someone has done everything that they need to do under the rules of a sport to be able to compete in that sport at any level, and whether it's male, female, whatever, if you've complied with the rules, then and you disagree with the rules, then it's hate the game, not the player. Do you know what I mean? If you've got an issue with the rules, then by all means have a look at the rules and what you might disagree with it. But the fact that Dan Leo and others have picked out this individual, and this applies in rugby as well, but like you were saying, John, it's this. It kind of presents this idea of these poor defenseless women. Who's going to save them from these trans women that are coming in to usurp them and take over the place? That's not what it's about. Women are perfectly capable of, playing, like you said, in the five-a-side, man. You absolutely overrun by a team of
They're
women.
absolutely more than capable. So a very interesting comparison, right? You're talking about like rules and regulations and being part of a system. Let's just look at let's concentrate on we concentrate a lot on the men's game for a second, but let's just look at someone like Jack Noel, who has openly stated he will not abide by COVID regulations. Let's just look at guys like him. Does he deserve to be told, you know what, you can't play the game you love anymore because, do you know what, you're an arsehole? Apologies for the swearing word, but it's the case that guys like him, like female rugby players who are transitioning, trans rugby players who are transitioning, they're doing their absolute damnedest to abide by all the absolute nonsense regulations that are put in their place. And guys like him are just standing there going, do you know what, I'm white and I've got like good hair, so I'm not
getting a vaccination. But then you've
I'm
got
not
someone
gonna
going
get
through
the
hell for someone going through hell for 12 months to get their testosterone levels down to an acceptable level to be able to play rugby.
Utterly devastating, isn't it? It's
And
so annoying.
Not only that, is they then have to, they're training. They've not only have they trained and they've eaten well and they've done all the things they need to be an athlete. Now they've got to go through all these different checks and all these different, that are frankly quite, aren't very nice to have to do.
Absolutely.
And then they're being told, oh, by the way, you shouldn't be doing this. I think it's absolute. It's a joke.
Yeah,
absolute joke.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe we should all tell Jack, no, he shouldn't be doing this.
Well, somebody should. I mean, that's probably my other hands in the rock. I think from a point of view of, I think it'd be interesting from an insurance point of view. I mean, I think he came out afterwards and started talking about is Jack Nolan's diabetic? Was it?
It was
Henry Slade was talking about saying he's diabetic, so he's got issues. He's had what he said in the interview was different to what he said afterwards. What he said in the interview was, I don't trust the vaccines. What he said afterwards was, I've had reactions to vaccines before from a medical point of view, and that's what I meant. That wasn't what he said in the interview. But anyway,
it wasn't. No,
I think from a, everybody's body's their own body, and I think if you're not putting if you're not going to get vaccinated, then I think unless you've got a particular risk to being vaccinated, then you're an arsehole, as John said, because you're putting others at risk. But I don't think you can start talking about forcibly doing it to people.
Nope.
I think from a sport point of view, it's different because then there's a consent issue. So, do you want to go into a game against somebody that's not voluntary? I think that having the COVID vaccine is going to put 5G chips in my arm, so I'm not getting it done. And you're playing in a team against somebody who can through a medical reason, and there are people like this, can for a medical reason have the vaccine. Or there's a coach who can't have the vaccine because there's lots of people who can't have vaccines for medical reasons. They're putting him at risk. And there's also, from an insurer's point of view, is an insurer going to insure a team where players voluntarily said, I'm not going to get the vaccine? Because then games are going to get cancelled.
Correct. And that should be extended. That should be extended to the trans issue. It is not a different thing. It is all about the same thing. It is about ensuring people to play the game, and we're talking about people. You're talking about people playing the game alongside their peers, and as you say, they've rightly jumped through a gazillion hoops to get into that situation where the single player that they're lining up against, you've all been in the position, Ian, you less so, mate, where you're defending against someone, and you're pointing in their direction, you're looking at them, and you are their defender. They are there to be your person. It doesn't matter. Like the insurance, if they can't hit those milestones, then they shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And
I think this, we've talked about this before, is that I think one there's kind of a body shaming issue that women can't be big. I think that's one of the kind of things that comes out of this whole debate. And also we've talked about the men's game. You've got Darcy and Doohan. We've talked about this before as a comparison. Both wingers, absolutely different from a physical point of view. And you look at some of the hits that Darcy Graham puts in. Rugby is a game for people of all shapes and sizes. And even in the amateur game, Chris, I remember playing when I was 15 and going down to Gosforth with Berwick. And you played up against a lad with a full beard who had absolutely gigantic thighs. And Christ, I hadn't even hit puberty at that time, barely. Do you know what I mean? And you're getting absolutely steamrolled by these guys.
Yep.
And is it unsafe? No more unsafe than rugby is generally, to be honest, as a sport, because everybody's a different size and shape.
Well, you just need to ask Johnny McGinty about going to training when I'm at training. And he's got to try and put a tackle into me. Now he's Twoply Eric, and I'm let's just say obese as being kind. So I'm a big lad. So these things. It's a nonsense to bring out these laws for transgender players within, especially the RFU's rules. It's an absolute nonsense. There's no chat. I just think of all the lads that have to tackle the big boys in training, and they're not. There's nobody coming out and going, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You can't do that." So I think it's an absolute nonsense.
Yeah. On that note, then, Friday. He's Dodmaster. John's still ranting away. He's put himself on mute, but he's still ranting away. That's fine. We'll leave him to it. Friday is Dodmaster. Don't forget at 8:30 on all our channels, so YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook. It'll be live from 8:30. You'll be able to watch it back later. Please donate. So it's if you Google Dodmaster, it's one of the top things that comes up. So please get donating and help us raise lots of money for My Name's Doddy. We'll do something similar next year, no doubt, for that. For the moment, though, it is goodbye from me and goodbye from John, Ian, and Craig.
Goodbye, all.
Night, troops.